What are the top 10 medicines prescribed on the NHS? Is it the same for the top 10 costs? What is increasing? What is going to be in the future? Are your medicines on the list? Inhalers, diabetes, including the Ozempic, thyroxine, statins, painkillers, antidepressants? I will answer all of this in this video. I'm Eloise, I'm a UK pharmacist of over 20 years, and I'm passionate about clear, accurate information on medicines and supplements that everyone can understand. In this video, it will be put into sections with timestamps below. To start with, I'm going to share where I've got the data from so that you can actually go and look at the data yourself and provide a key summary. Then I'm going to go on to the top 10 prescription medications in volume, then follow that on with the top 10 prescription medications according to cost. And there's only one drug that is in both of those lists. To follow on, I'm going to go with the products with the largest increase in costs over the last year. And then at the end, I'm going to give some of my predictions. But before I start on the content, my disclaimers. This information is for educational information only, and the opinions on these drugs are my own. However, I do try and base it on the most up-to-date medical evidence. Always contact a healthcare professional for individual advice on your own personal situation. So whatever I say about any of these medicines, if you are taking them or you want to take them, please discuss it with your doctor first. But now I'll move on to the main topic. The information that I'm using in this video is publicly available on the internet, and I have left a link in the description box below. So this is from the Business Services Authority of the National Health Service, and this is where all the prescriptions that community pharmacies dispense get sent and processed for them to be able to reimburse the pharmacies and then charge the NHS to the appropriate pots of money. So these are the key findings that were published last year for the financial year 21 to 22. For 22-23, that data should be coming out within the next couple of months. So their key findings. There was nearly £10 billion spent on prescriptions dispensed in England. And this is increasing year on year. And that's also a number of prescriptions is 1.14 billion. And that equates to, for the 60 million people in England, that equates to about 20 items per person. Obviously, some people don't take any medications. Other people may be having well over 100 different items during the year. If they're collecting a repeat prescription of 10 items each month, then that's 120 items over the year. So I've blanked out the actual answers because I will be doing them later in the video. But the most dispensed drug actually have 53 million items. Comment in the description box below if you want to give a guess at what that is now before you actually see the chart. And the one with the highest cost was for £400 million. Again, do you think that they're the same drugs or different drugs? And put your comment below with what your predictions are. And obviously, there is one particular item that actually had a massive increase over the last year. It is in diabetes, but it might not be the one that you're thinking of. So carry on listening to find out the answers. Here is the graph that was in that document that shows the top 10 prescription items in the financial year from April 21 through till March 22. As you can see, the top item there of 53 million items is significantly above the next 9. But we'll start our way at the bottom and work our way up to find out what that is. So at the bottom, salbutamol. This is the blue inhaler that you probably know as the reliever inhaler. This is the inhaler that all asthmatics should carry around with them and be able to take in an emergency having an asthma attack, and is a life-saving medication. However, surprisingly, I am going to say that I would actually like that to drop out of the top 10. Not because it isn't any good, but because we need to be getting the treatment of asthma better. There has been a study, which I will link below, called the Asthma Kills study, that has shown that people that rely on their salbutamol inhalers and are not taking their preventative inhalers or optimizing their preventative inhalers by going for their asthma reviews are more likely to die when they have an asthma attack. So I would love to see that salbutamol inhalers are literally only needed for an emergency and that the asthma is under control. Next, metformin. This is the first line treatment for type 2 diabetes and has got decades of evidence showing that it can help lower blood sugar levels as well as being protective for future complications, especially around heart disease for those with type 2 diabetes. So for those people that can tolerate it, it is excellent, although should be introduced slowly because for some people it can upset their stomach. But if it's introduced slowly and can get tolerated, it is an excellent medication. The next is colecalciferol. This is just the name of the type of vitamin D that is best absorbed when taken by tablet. And then the body uses it for vitamin D, which is essential for overall health as well as the strength of the bones. The reason why this seems to be so many items is because it also includes preparations where it's colecalciferol plus calcium, which is used for osteoporosis and treating people with fragile bones. So this does need to continue to be prescribed to try and keep people's bones as strong as possible. Bisoprolol. This, along with all the other drugs ending in olol, are beta blockers, and these help keep the heart rate nice and consistent. Bisoprolol has the advantage over some of the other older beta blockers in that it is cardio-specific, so it affects just the heart and doesn't cause as many of the other side effects, such as cold hands and feet, like the older propranolol does. Excellent in ensuring that people don't go on to get future heart attacks, and also can slow down the progression of heart failure. Next, ramipril. This is part of a group of drugs called ACE inhibitors that all end in pril. These help lower the blood pressure, so are used in hypertension. They also have a cardioprotective effect in preventing heart attacks. They can also help protect the kidneys, especially for those people that have got diabetes. So often it is added in for people with diabetes even before they actually get high blood pressure. Lansoprazole, and this and the other drugs ending in azole are proton pump inhibitors. These provide protection in the stomach by reducing the stomach acid and can be great at reducing the risk of having stomach bleeds, especially when people are taking other medication that increase the risk of stomach bleeds, such as aspirin, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory painkillers, and so should be used as protection. However, they in themselves, taken long term, can have side effects. So people that are taking it for just indigestion, really, they should try and keep the amount of time that they take it as short as possible so that they don't have the long-term side effects. Amlodipine. This is another class of drug that's used as a blood pressure treating agent called calcium channel blockers. I am surprised that it's above ramipril and bisoprolol, but it is really just the main one in its group that is used, whereas there's many prils that are used and many olols that are used, which is probably why it's further up there. But again, it's excellent at helping keep the heart pumping as efficiently as possible and reducing high blood pressure, which has its own long-term risk factors. Levothyroxine. So this is a replacement for the thyroid hormone thyroxine and is used for the many people that have got hypothyroidism, where the thyroid isn't working as efficiently as possible, so therefore their metabolism has slowed down, leading to significant problems. It can also be used as a replacement after somebody's had their thyroid removed if they'd had hyperthyroidism. So one of the most common drugs, it is going to stay there for the long term. There is really no other alternative for it. Omeprazole. Again, this is another azole, the same as the lansoprazole. It came out about the same time. They're both about the same price. They're both up there because some people work, one works better than the other, but there's no difference really between them. So now that leaves us to the top agent, and this is atorvastatin. This is taken over as the main statin. It is the one that's got the most evidence. It's the one where we can get people up to the highest dose to try and reduce the long-term risk of cardiovascular problems by lowering the cholesterol. This is probably going to remain as one of the top cost drugs for the long term, because as well as reducing the cholesterol level, it has got so much evidence to show that it's reducing the amount of heart disease going forward. So it's likely to remain there. Move on to the graph that shows the top cost drugs in the same time period. And as you can see on this graph, there are 4 particular medications that stand out as much more costly to the NHS as the other items. So again, we will start at the bottom and work our way up. At the bottom is colecalciferol. As I mentioned before, this is vitamin D that's in a form that the body can absorb. And this is actually the only medicine that is on both this graph and the previous graph. So on the previous graph, all the medications are off patent, have generic versions, and are fairly cost effective to the NHS in the prescribing. All the ones on this list are much more costly, and therefore we do need to look at this list more on whether we are getting the good value to the NHS. So colecalciferol, as mentioned before, it is an essential nutrient, and it is something that we do need to be giving people when they're vitamin D deficient and if they've got osteoporosis. But we do need to try and make sure that they're on a preparation that's as cost effective to the NHS as possible. The next section isn't even a medication at all. This is foods for special diets. So this is mainly gluten-free medication, gluten-free food items for those with celiacs, as well as a few other items for a few different unique metabolic disorders. There's a whole different subject on whether these should be on the NHS, should be on prescription, but I'll leave that discussion for other people and another day. The next 2 items are both corticosteroids that are inhaled in inhalers, and these are for the treatment of both asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease known as COPD. So these help reduce any inflammation that's in the lungs and actually help treat the cause of the asthma and the underlying condition. And as I said previously in the previous graph, we need people to be on the optimum doses of these medications so that they're not actually having asthma attacks, and that these are actually helping the underlying condition so that that emergency isn't happening. The next item is the influenza vaccines. This appears every year because every year there needs to be new research and development to cover the latest strains of influenza, and therefore this is going to be a medication that is going to keep a cost to the NHS because we aren't going to just get generic versions of such vaccines in the future. But it is essential in helping prevent vulnerable groups of people from being hospitalised from flu each year. The next section is glucose testing for those people with diabetes. both those that are type 1 insulin dependent diabetes, which will need to test on a regular basis each day to be able to adjust their insulin requirements to their food requirements, and also those that are far along their type 2 diabetes journey, where they've got to the point that taking all the medication is no longer working and they need to add insulin in. And also for some people that have got type 2 diabetes that might not be on insulin but are at risk of hypos from the type of medication, and they need to know that they're safe to drive. So the glucose testing, this comes as two different types. There's the more traditional finger prick testing, where you prick your finger, place the drop of blood onto a strip and put it in a glucose meter and do a reading. This can be maybe twice a day for those with type 2 diabetes, but could be up to 6, 7, 8 times a day for those with type 1. So over the last few years, we have had major technological developments in testing. So there is now patches that can be worn on the arm with sensors in them that can relay figures onto a reading device or onto a mobile phone and provide sort of instant results. And these are getting more and more use, especially for those with type 1 diabetes, and can be life-changing. The next item here is rivaroxaban. Now, this is an anticoagulant which is used for thinning of the blood. Many people may already be aware of warfarin. Warfarin was always the gold standard of being able to prevent clots, especially with those people who had had clots in their legs, known as DVTs, clots in the lungs, known as pulmonary embolisms, and also at preventing strokes in those people that have conditions such as atrial fibrillation, which is a heartbeat that's irregular that can disrupt clots to go to the brain and cause strokes. But now we have these new agents called DOACs that can be used instead of warfarin, and they don't need as much monitoring as warfarin, although they do still need to have some monitoring, and have seen as being much safer, but they are a much higher cost. So this is a great advancement, but it is a great cost to the NHS. Again, beclomethasone. Now, this is similar to the inhaled corticosteroids below as the budesonide and fluticasone, and there is more inhalers with this type of steroid in it. This type of steroid is as effective as the other two. It just seems to be, because it's been out longer, the devices containing this are slightly cheaper, and therefore more of these are prescribed across the NHS, resulting in the higher cost. Second from top, number 2 position is enteral nutrition. Again, this is different to the foods for special diets. These are the drinks that are either for people to take when they're undernourished and struggling to eat a solid diet, and also for those people who are unable to eat at all and are needing their food being given either through a tube in the nose or a tube directly into the stomach. This is a massive cost, but for these people without this nutrition, they would literally starve. So it is required, and this is done on prescription the majority of the times. Some areas of the country have worked out other ways to try and provide this to the patients that's off prescription. So in that case, this figure technically should actually be even higher. But it is life-saving and it is a prescription cost. And now for the top spot. Apixiban. This is a similar drug to what I've just talked about of rivaroxaban. However, it is used mostly as the first line agent because it is the one that's been out the longest. It has the most evidence and is being used so effectively for all of those that have got atrial fibrillation, and it's reduced the amount of people that have had to be on warfarin and had all the additional testing requirements that warfarin has had, and it's reduced the bleeding risks that we had with warfarin. So it's there as the top cost drug. Whether it's going to remain there as the top cost drug over the next coming years, we'll have to wait and see. Hopefully, it should be coming off patent and should be getting generic cheaper drugs, but there has been controversy in the courts with the company on whether this is going to happen. So we will just have to wait and see whether this cost will reduce. We're moving on to the third graph, and this shows the cost increases into the 21-22 financial year. In this graph, it is broken down to actual presentations and not just the drug name. So I may be referring to things as two different names. So we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. So Jardiance is at the bottom. This is a brand of empagliflozin. This is a new agent out on the market for treating type 2 diabetes. It helps by helping the body excrete extra sugar out of the system, and also has been shown to help provide some protection against the heart. So is an up-and-coming type 2 diabetes agent. The next is Lixiana. Now, this is the brand name of edoxaban, and edoxaban is a sister drug to the rivaroxaban and Apixiban that was on the previous graph. This sister drug has come out since the previous two, shown to be non-inferior, and has come on the market at a cheaper price point in the hope that the NHS can start using this one and save money for all of those people out there that need to have anticoagulation to help prevent strokes and other clots. Next agent is famotidine. Many of you may remember ranitidine that used to be available but got discontinued a few years ago when they weren't able to manufacture it without a contaminant coming into it. So this is a H2 antagonist. It reduces the amount of acid in the stomach and provides some protection on the stomach, but is not as effective as the proton pump inhibitors such as lansoprazole and omeprazole back on the first graph. And so it's only really reserved for those people that cannot tolerate the proton pump inhibitors. The next agent, as you've probably been waiting for, is Ozempic, which is the brand name of semaglutide. This is a GLP-1 antagonist and is used for diabetes as an injection. And it's very helpful in the treatment of type 2 diabetes in helping lower sugar levels. And as a result of its mode of action, it was found that when people were taking it for type 2 diabetes, they also managed to have a significant weight loss. And so, as you are probably aware, it has been marketed and been sold privately for the use in losing weight. It has also got another brand of semaglutide called Winomig, has been licensed for use on the NHS by specialist services for those that are severely obese to help lose weight as well. Fortunately, yes, it does help with the reduction of weight. It isn't a magic injection. It still has to be part of a healthy lifestyle and a calorie deficit to help with that weight reduction. But I could do a whole other video on that if anybody is interested. But that's where it is. It is providing a cost pressure for the NHS. Possibly not as much cost pressure as we thought, because the NHS has had to slow the use of it due to the stock shortages because of the amount of production that has been thrown into the private market worldwide for this agent. So I am hoping that supplies can be maintained so that it can have its useful spot in the treatment of type 2 diabetes. Obviously, that is my opinion. There's plenty of opinions out there around Ozempic. Next agent is Fluvax. Well, this was the name of one of the flu vaccines that was used in this current year. As I said, each year it has to be developed as a new agent, the flu vaccine, to current the new strains. So there is always going to be at least one or two flu vaccines in the top 10 cost drugs each year as the companies do the research and produce a brand new vaccine each year. The next agent is Trimbow. Now, this is a very interesting inhaler. In fact, it's one of the first on the market as an inhaler that contains 3 different agents, hence the tri. So 3 different agents, as in it contains a inhaled corticosteroid, which, as I explained on the previous graph, is excellent at reducing the inflammation in the lungs and helping treat the condition. It also contains a long-acting antimuscarinic agent, which opens up the airways, and a long-acting bronchodilator that opens up the airways. So it's 3 drugs all in one inhaler, which should really help in really help the person that's having to take these inhalers, that it's only one inhaler instead of remembering to take 3 inhalers each day. Next agent is Forxiga, which is the brand name for dapagliflozin, which is like the agent at the bottom, empagliflozin, except for dapagliflozin, as well as treating type 2 diabetes and having some protective effect on the heart. It actually has been shown to help reduce the progression of heart failure. And so, as well as it being used for type 2 diabetes, it is now also being used for those people with end-stage heart failure to slow the progression of the heart failure. Hence why it is much further up the list to the Jardiance at the bottom. So now on to the top 3, where we're suddenly getting massive increase in costs. This next one is Eliquis, the 5 milligram tablets. This is the brand name for the Apixiban that was on the previous graph. It is still being used more and more often. Continually, we're trying to find more and more people that have got atrial fibrillation, that are at risk of having problems with strokes in the future, and getting them treated earlier. And as we get them treated earlier, we're actually keeping these people alive longer. Therefore, we'll continue to need it, and the costs will continue to increase. Second from top, this is another flu vaccine. As I've already said, with the Fluvlavax, there's always going to be 1 or 2 of these agents in the cost each year. So now we are on to the top agent. So is it one of the ones that you've been thinking, where is it? Well, it is the Freestyle Libre 2 sensor. And this is a blood glucose sensor that is worn on the arm. You've probably seen it advertised. It will not take much of a Google search to then suddenly see this advertised everywhere that you look. It has been a game-changing advance in the treatment of people with insulin in type 2 diabetes, as they're able to monitor what the blood sugars are doing, whether they're on the way up or whether they're on the way down, and just provide such a great improvement in their quality of life. This and the other sensors that are now coming on the market, such as the Dexcom, are going to be continual cost increases for the NHS for the future. And we're just going to have to see how this technology moves on, and whether this technology is going to continue to increase in price, or whether we're going to be able to get the costs of these appliances to reduce. So that's the end of the data, and then I'll just move on to my final thoughts. And now to the final section with a few of my thoughts and predictions. So I predict that diabetes is probably going to dominate the increase in costs, both with the newer agents that are both taken orally and injected, and the new devices to make measuring glucose much easier and help people have a much better quality of life with their diabetes. The anticoagulants, such as the Apixiban and the edoxaban, are going to remain as top costs until we can find a way of reducing the costs of these with generic alternatives. We're still going to likely see continued high usage of statins, inhalers, thyroxine. All of these conditions are just going to remain as we keep people living longer. I hope you have found this video interesting. Please comment below with any items or medicines that shocked you below. And also comment whether you would like to see more videos like this with the background data of what's being prescribed on the NHS. And if you'd like to see some more of my videos, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much for watching.